welcome. My name is Lacey Sheldon, and I am here at McIntosh Memorial Library in Viroqua, Wisconsin. Today, we have invited Mr. William Fiorella to give his presentation on Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbs, and Qi Gong. So before I introduce Bill, I just want to say that this presentation is a part of January East Asian Heritage Month, which is the first month in the library's all-ages, year-long humanities program entitled Creating Community Beyond Biases, Library Resources. So I'd like to introduce Bill. I'm going to read a part of his biography that is located on his website, which is www.williamfiorella.com. You want to give us a wave, Bill? There's Bill. So William earned his master's degree from the Emperor's College of Traditional Oriental Medicine, receiving the honor of summa cum laude. He is licensed to practice acupuncture and herbal medicine in the states of California and Wisconsin. He holds an official teacher's certificate from the William C.C. Chen School of Tai Chi Chuan in New York City and is a student of world-renowned Qi Gong master Ken Cohen. William has an approach to medicine as an art form, and he has an ability to listen to the patients to determine what techniques and or medicinal substances may be helpful for each individual. Following in the footsteps of the great masters of classical Chinese medicine, it is not uncommon for William to perform an acupuncture treatment, to prescribe unique herbal formulas, and to teach therapeutic Qigong exercises, which is exactly what this presentation is about today. Also to note that William's knowledge of herbal medicine comes from over 20 years of practice with his hands-on study with master herbalists. So we are very excited to welcome Mr. William Fiorella today, otherwise known as Bill, to give his presentation here for us. Thank you again, Bill, and you have our full attention.
Okay, thank you, Lacey. Thanks everybody for coming. Hi, Mary. And I cannot see Trina there, but I'll wave. So it's a huge topic that we are getting involved with here. As Lacey said, East Asian Heritage Month, right? So we should first just talk about the name right up front. So many people at this time in history want this medicine to be called East Asian medicine instead of Chinese medicine. So just a good thing to be aware of. There's no real decision on that. You know, the word Oriental has certainly been pulled out already in most circles. Even though the school that I went to is Emperor's College of Traditional Oriental Medicine, most folks are pulling back away from the word Oriental and trying to move toward East Asian medicine, because most countries in Asia practice some version of acupuncture and of course herbal medicine, which is the sort of like the planet's birthright of medicines. What culture doesn't practice herbal medicine? So these things go back a long ways. We know, for example, that the Mayans practiced acupuncture as well.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know when. We don't know when they started, but there's evidence of it for sure. We also know that North American native tribes used what we call moxibustion, which of course is a Japanese term, you know, so now we're getting, you know, we're mixing everything. But the practice of burning Artemisia vulgaris, otherwise known as mugwort, right on the skin to effect various cures, apparently was practiced by North American Indian tribes, or native tribes, sorry, going as far back as we don't even know. So we have to ask these questions, like, how is it possible that that people here on this continent were burning the exact same species of plant in the exact same way for pretty much the same types of cures as they were in China thousands of years ago? So this is a very interesting question, you know. I would love to answer it for you, but nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
But we have the evidence that this has happened. So most of the time, the moxa or the mugwort will be put over joints
Mm-hmm.
for what they used to call rheumatism, so arthritis. And you'll see, burn marks will be, even to this day amongst older generation Chinese, especially, you will see scars
Mm-hmm.
at the joints,
Mm-hmm.
certain acupuncture points.
Mm-hmm.
They will burn it down right to the skin, and it actually will scar.
Mm-hmm.
Very effective therapeutically, though.
Mm-hmm.
And this, we believe, predates the actual puncturing of the skin with any type of sharp object. So we
Mm-hmm.
believe it's older.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Um, if I
Yeah.
could hop in for a second.
Any
I
anytime, because I will just like keep going.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll keep my comments brief, but just want to warm up a little bit. I'd like to let folks know that at one point I had been receiving acupuncture from a licensed acupuncturist in California.
Oh,
And
cool.
I went to see her for every week for about a year. And she also prescribed to me different herbal blends as well. And I received the needling and the cupping and the mugwort applications.
Right.
So I have a bit of a familiarity with this. However, I think, maybe some people who are joining today or listening from home might be completely brand new to the whole idea of Chinese medicine. So maybe what would be how would you introduce the terms of Chinese medicine, Phil?
Yeah. So we we don't know when it began.
Okay.
We have inscriptions on tortoise shells dating back to 2500 BC.
Wow.
Um, but no, nothing we can really point our finger at, except I think I brought this. Did I bring it? I did not bring it. There's a book
Oh.
called the Yellow Emperor's Classic of Internal Medicine that was published somewhere around the year 220 BC,
Oh,
or
wow.
BCE is now the correct term.
Mm-hmm.
And that book, at its time of publishing, was very well worked out. It was obvious that it was compiled from many older manuscripts,
Mm-hmm.
many
Mm-hmm.
authors.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sort of assume that the practice of this medicine existed quite a long time before that.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
definitely. Mm-hmm.
And so the practice is composed of five main branches, five main facets.
Okay.
The oldest book, the Yellow Emperor's Classic, discusses all of them.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I had it right in my mind. Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
mentioned in there.
Uh-huh.
Number one is the puncturing or pricking of the skin
Mm-hmm.
at certain locations that they called holes.
Okay.
Okay, so at that time, religion and superstition and the connection to ancestors in the spirit world were all completely tied into everyday life.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the medicine was all infused with that stuff as well.
Mhm.
So the book reads, it's a little hard to understand what they're talking about, because they're talking about, an evil spirit or an evil element of some kind, taking up residence in a hole in the body.
Mm. Okay.
And that we must remove it.
Mhm.
Much like traditional doctors all over the world will, suck out the bad spirit, and the
Mhm.
person is healed, right? So
Mhm.
this medicine has very similar roots. The thing that is quite different
Mhm.
is just how carefully they mapped out the body.
Okay. Mhm.
The energy channels clearly illustrated in the book from 200 BCE, and all the main points on the channels clearly delineated, with descriptive
Wow.
locations and how to locate them,
Mhm.
and different
Mhm.
methods of
Mhm.
working with those
Mhm.
to elicit various responses and cures.
Mhm. Mhm.
All worked out by 220 BCE for sure. And we still use those points today. Um,
Wow, isn't that something? That's so
yeah,
fascinating.
there's been a lot of
How
points added, but
mm,
you
how
know,
ancient the techniques are, especially the first one of the pricking of the skin, which must equate to the needling aspect.
right. So
Yeah.
there were 9 types of needles.
Hmm.
We only have 2 left now, 3 left now. that we
Okay. Okay. Hmm.
um, we have what's called the filiform needle, which I actually brought some to show.
Sure.
And this is listed in the Yellow Emperor's Classic. It's called the filiform needle. It's the thinnest. I don't even know. There, you can see it.
Yep, we can see it. Yeah, it's so small.
So it's about, you could see how flexible this is. It's about as thin as it's thinner than the high E string on a guitar.
A good
Okay.
reference for some. Yeah.
You
Could you touch it again, Bill? It is really flexible, huh?
Right. So you can see
Oh my. Okay.
very flexible.
And what is that made out of?
Stainless steel
Okay.
also is new.
Hmm.
The needles are now made of stainless steel because some people have allergic reactions to various metals.
Right, that makes sense. Okay.
Now, here in my practice, in an attempt to adhere to some of the old practices,
Hmm.
I use these, and in my mind,
Hmm.
I consider them to be made of silver
Okay.
so that I can transmit the qualities that the metal of silver has.
Hmm.
And then I also have 24 karat gold needles.
Okay.
So I alternate these to attempt to adhere to some of the old approaches of different metals.
Hmm.
Very few people have an allergic reaction to 24 karat gold. So it's safe.
Hmm.
Nobody really has a reaction to stainless steel.
Hmm.
So I just use my mind intent and call it
Hmm.
silver.
Okay. Okay. There we go.
Then I can use some different intentions, which is all talked about in the old books.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
silver is going to have a more clearing, moving quality in the body. Gold is going to have a more strengthening,
Hmm.
tonifying
Hmm.
quality.
Oh, interesting.
And
And you said
so,
that there are, oh, didn't want to interrupt you. You said that there are two other needles as well.
right,
There's
so
this type,
filiform.
filiform.
Then there's the 3-edge needle, which is also in the Yellow Emperor's Classic,
Hmm.
which is used for, believe it or not, pricking blood vessels to let blood out,
Okay.
which we
Uh,
still do.
mm,
Um,
okay.
we don't do it very often, but it is part of the practice still.
Okay.
In the old days, it was a significant part of the practice in the old days.
Okay.
Now it's used a little more conservatively.
Yeah, not as much, huh? Is that the case with the third needle as well?
The third needle is the plum blossom needle,
Plum.
which is really beautiful. And it's one of
Hmm.
the needles that, like, I tell myself every day, I got to use that more. But I don't,
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
because it's really only good for certain things in my mind. And so it's
Okay.
a little hammer. Would you like me to go get it and show it to you?
Yes,
Okay.
of course. Wow, so fascinating. Fascinating. I had no idea that there was a 24 karat gold needle.
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
So I think, can you guys see me?
Yes, we can. I'll
Yeah.
tell you, we can't see the needle yet.
I
You would need
lost
to,
I lost my own view of myself somehow, but
okay,
let me, oh, there we go.
that help?
So this is a tiny little hammer,
Mm-hmm.
has a little opening on one end, is very flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is the plum blossom needle.
Yep, there it is. Okay.
You see, there's a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
little needles on there,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
they're about 16th of an inch long.
Mm-hmm.
There it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this goes into the tip of this, screws in, and so these are disposable, so you don't use it on more than one person.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say I had numbness and tingling of my arm,
Mm-hmm.
what we call neuropathy,
Mm-hmm.
very common scenario. One very reasonable treatment is to use the plum blossom
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
up and down the arm
Mm-hmm.
like this. So you're not actually breaking the skin.
Mm-hmm.
You're not breaking the skin. The needles they're hitting just hard enough to stimulate, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not really breaking the skin.
Mm-hmm.
This essentially makes all the nerves in the superficial layer here
Mm-hmm.
just light up.
Mm-hmm. Bill, that is so interesting. And when we're talking about the needles, it has been my own experience going week after week after week that I feel like very minimal amount of times did I ever experience seeing my own blood or, having that kind of response to being needled. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, Bill, and just to let people know what is the association with needles and blood? Like it.
Okay, so right, so obviously, if you're pricking the skin to let out blood, you're going to see blood. When will this be used? Nowadays, in modern practice, it's really only used for physical injury. Sometimes you'll see it used.
Mhm,
Let's say you really, messed up your shoulder or your elbow.
mhm,
There are some practitioners that will still use the old school approach, and they'll
mhm,
figure out what pathway the injury's on. Let's say
mhm,
it's the front muscle here. We can call that the Yang Ming channel.
mhm,
And the Yang Ming channel goes to the first finger, and they will prick the tip of that first finger and let out a few drops of blood.
mhm,
And this somehow alters the blood flow through the whole channel.
mhm,
So swelling will go down, the pain will improve,
mhm,
things like this. So it's used almost like a first aid treatment
mhm,
for injury
mhm,
still.
mhm,
It's also used for emotional disorders.
hmm,
So every pathway and channel has what's called a low connecting point on it. This is a point that has been always used to treat emotional conditions related to that pathway. So each pathway has a different flavor and is associated with different emotional content.
mhm,
So, for example, let's say I lost a relative and I'm grieving and I can't get over it. The normal grieving period is over and I'm still acting as if it happened yesterday, which is very common. Well, we associate the lungs with sadness, grieving, loss. Um, and so the lung channel, which comes to your thumb, like every other channel, has a low connecting point on it, right? We would choose the low connecting point, prick it and let a little bit of blood out to treat the sadness and the grieving and loss, to help the person move forward.
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
is how it's used in that way. And there are still practitioners that do that.
Okay. Um, that's interesting. Would you say it's common or uncommon in a typical routine day, that if it, throughout all the different clients and patients that would come in, that blood is not seen very often? Would you say that's overall a bit more?
In modern practice, we're going to be using the filiform needles only for the most
Mhm,
part.
mhm,
We're also going to be, most practitioners are going to be using what's called a guide tube,
mhm,
which is a Japanese method.
mhm.
So the needle goes into the guide tube. I'll show you exactly how this happens, right? So I have my
Yeah,
needle,
yeah.
I have
Uh-huh.
my guide tube. I will put the needle in the guide tube,
Mhm,
and I'm just holding the handle of the needle to
mhm,
the top of the guide tube.
mhm,
When I go to insert this into a point, let's see if I can show you.
mhm.
Here's my point, right?
Yeah.
I let go of the top.
Uh-huh.
Now the needle is sticking out 1/8 of an inch above the guide tube. So
Uh-huh.
when I tap it,
Yep.
it goes right in.
Yep.
Can
That's
you see it in there?
yes, we can. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there it is, right? The
Mm-hmm.
guide tube enables me to just pop right past the skin, which is where most of the pain sensors are.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel anything.
Right.
What I feel now is I can feel some sensations in my arm, and I can
Mm-hmm.
feel a little achiness around the point, which is my body rushing to this location right here
Mm-hmm.
to find out what that thing is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My body is in like high alert right now.
Mm-hmm.
My mind is totally relaxed because it's acupuncture. I know what acupuncture is.
Mm-hmm.
Body doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Body is a survival. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like unbelievable survival machine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everything it's got is rushing to this spot right now to make sure this is nothing harmful.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So all the blood's going there, all the nerves are firing, all kinds
Mm-hmm.
of stuff is happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you can feel a little achiness there from the blood filling the area and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That in turn is going to stimulate all kinds of other things along its pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so anyway, then this comes out very easy, it's just as easy as it went in.
Mm-hmm.
The needles are always disposed of in a medical sharps container and only used once, which is
Mm-hmm.
also a new thing. They
Mm-hmm.
even 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, you were still allowed to autoclave and steam your needles and reuse them.
Mm-hmm. That is not the case any longer.
No, and
Yeah.
it's good and bad. It's good because no one has to worry about any type of
Mm-hmm.
diseases being passed along.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so good because the entire tradition of either hand making your needles or inheriting your needles from your uncle or something that have been in the family for generations
Mm-hmm.
is down the tubes.
Yeah. And possibly, left as a heirloom of sorts. Yes.
Right. You
Yeah.
know,
Um, Fascinating. Is there any other questions or thoughts from the audience about the subject here of the acupuncture? I think you've done a really great job, Bill, of letting us know some of those real basics of it. And that demonstration was excellent. It looks, we can see, or at least I saw, that it's not painful. It's not altogether that's scary.
no.
And to mention as well that oftentimes it's a very therapeutic setting in which, and you
Yes.
maybe could talk a little bit more about when you have a client come in. Uh, it's a very relaxed atmosphere, real calm, almost like a time to take a nap, really. So the
Yes.
needles are added. for their therapeutic value, and then the person has some time to relax and have maybe about 10, 20 minutes or so of treatment
Um,
time.
it depends on what we're doing, and it
Mhm,
depends on the person.
mhm,
You have to work with everybody's situation. Some people don't are uncomfortable lying on their back for 20 minutes. And
mhm.
so we just work with the scenario, but typically 20 minutes is considered to be the minimum amount to get good results.
Okay. Yeah.
That said, most treatments last 35 to
Mhm.
40 minutes,
Right. And
especially
throughout
once
a
people get
person's
comfortable.
day. Yeah. Be very comfortable. And throughout the total hours of a day to take 30 or 40 minutes for a treatment probably can go a very long way. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, Excellent. Thank you, Bill. I think in the interest of time, maybe we could move or flow into having a bit of a conversation about the herbs. So on your website, I noticed that you do have a spot there highlighted for the herbs. Could you talk more about that? It seems like you have a particular interest in this portion as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell the total truth here.
Mhm.
When I went to school for Chinese
Mhm.
medicine, I had no interest in acupuncture.
Okay. Uh-huh.
I went to Chinese medicine school to study herbs because I was already an herbalist.
Mm-hmm.
And the licensed acupuncturist license is the only recognized license in America for an herbalist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of people that are probably will get upset about that comment because we do have the American Herbalist Guild that does certify people, but it is not recognized by the medical community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I figured, well, if I'm really going to do this, let me just go the full distance. You know, I'll learn about Chinese herbs and I'll get an actual license and maybe it'll help my practice. You know, this was my thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And about a year into the program, I became fascinated with acupuncture. I said, I don't have to go walk. I don't have to climb the mountain and gather all these plants. I can just carry this little pack of needles around with me.
Isn't that interesting how, how our interests can evolve and change, and through education, we can continue to be lifelong learners. That's really
Yeah.
fascinating, Bill.
So I became fascinated with acupuncture. However, herbs have really always been a mainstay for me. I
Hmm.
had studied real down home kind of grassroots herbalism with various folks out in the country back east where I grew up. The type of thing where, you know, I drive 5, 6 hours and stay with someone out in the country for a week. And
Hmm.
every day we'd be out in the woods and learning, just hands on, this type
Hmm.
of thing. And that was really my training. And then I did a bunch of coursework later to fill in the gaps and whatnot. I got to work with some field botanists when I lived out in Southern California, which was fantastic. You've never seen a group of people more scared to ingest an herb than the field botanists,
Hmm.
because they know all the chemicals that's in the herb.
Okay, okay.
So they are
Um,
very wary. They're very wary of eating or ingesting the herb because they know it has, for example, cyanide in it or something.
okay. So that would be herbs located in the southern deserts of the United States, California, you mentioned specifically.
This was in Southern
So,
California where there's a lot of really intense herbs, you know.
okay.
But we had a
I was,
great time, and
yeah.
you know, I remember making tea for him after our hikes of stuff that I'd gather, and
Uh-huh.
you know, he
Yeah,
would try
it's
the tea and he would like it. So
Yeah, I would say that it certainly is important to have such a knowledge base before consuming any herbs, of course. But if you have really, it seems like, delved into knowing and identifying Chinese herbs. So
yeah,
I'm wondering if, and as you mentioned before, herbs of East Asia. So I am curious. Are the herbs that you use in your practice, um, would any of those be familiar to us here in the Baroque community?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The beauty of the Chinese herbal system is that it's what we call an unbroken herbal system. It has never stopped. There's never been a point in history where it went out of style. It has been practiced and developed and written about consistently for thousands of years.
Wow.
So there we have so much information. Not only that, but it's developed to such a sophisticated level that they've really mastered not only how to prepare the different herbs before they even get to the patient to enhance their effects, such as licorice root, for example.
Mm-hmm.
In the Western system, we love licorice root. We use it for many things, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the Chinese system, they do things like they'll take the licorice root and they'll, char it over a fire
Mm-hmm.
and use that for certain conditions.
Mm-hmm.
The raw will be used for different conditions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then they'll also sometimes fry it in honey, and then that's used for something completely different.
Oh, wow.
So because it's an unbroken tradition, there's thousands of years of developing these methods,
Mm-hmm.
and then the ability to combine different herbs to enhance the effect even further is
Mm-hmm.
also, I won't say it's unique to the Chinese, but I will say that they have developed it to an incredibly sophisticated level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
Um,
in modern time, just to finish your question,
yeah, please.
in modern practice, the herbs are usually grown on farms now in China, and they do use, for example, colt's foot flower. We talked about licorice root. We have skullcap in Western herbalism. They use
Mm-hmm.
that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so many herbs.
Mm-hmm.
Artemisia, mugwort
Mm-hmm.
is a huge herb in Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Motherwort. Um, I think I could go as far as to say that just about every herb we use here, they use as well,
Wow, that's
because
great.
China has all of the same types of ecosystems that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I don't think it has a proper Mediterranean climate anywhere, but I could be wrong. We have to look that up. But it has deserts, it has mountain regions, it has rainy areas, it has arid
Mm-hmm.
areas, it has river basins, so a lot of the same herbs grow there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, that makes complete sense. What
yeah,
about the example of ginger? And I don't want to oversimplify
perfect.
anything because I'm understanding how the depths and yeah, I don't want to oversimplify anything, but if you could maybe give an example of how ginger is an application.
Awesome. Yeah, so in Chinese medicine, ginger, which is called shengjiang, so jiang is the ginger, sheng means fresh.
Mm,
So they have shengjiang, they have ganjiang, which is dried ginger. They're used totally differently. So this is how detailed it is. So shengjiang is seen as a relatively mild, warming, somewhat acrid herb
mm-hmm,
that is going to be beneficial for digestion and for clearing phlegm from the lungs
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
for the most part.
mm-hmm,
It's not a heavy hitter. It's often, they even use it, they'll just add it to herbal formulas just to make the formula more palatable for the person's stomach, because
mm-hmm,
some of the other herbs might be kind of intense.
mm-hmm.
Um, Now, the ganjang, the dried ginger, is considered hot by nature. So not just warm, but hot. and is typically only seen in formulas for either what we call yang deficiency, meaning your internal core fire, the furnace of your body, the thing that makes it all go, right, is waning. So these are folks that, you know, are wearing a sweater in the summertime because they're always cold. It doesn't even matter if you put the jacket on, you're still cold. Okay. The yang energy, the core yang energy, or what we call the kidney yang energy, is declining. Cold all the time. You'll see ganjiang used in those formulas, not shengjiang.
Yep.
And in the other application will be for serious pain, you will see ganjiang used, the dried ginger.
Okay. Wow. I mean, that's just so interesting.
Just to clarify, I think that the dried ginger that they're using, and this is something that would be worth looking up actually, are they the same exact species?
Right, because there are different species of that ginger.
Right. One might be a wild ginger root, which even in Western herbalism is treated with a light touch. You know, some people won't even, some people won't even use it because it's dangerous. So their ganjiang might very well be a wild ginger as compared to what they use for the fresh, which is probably cultivated. So even there, maybe there's not that much of a difference.
Boy, the pursuits of lifelong learning, you know.
So I have to look that up.
Absolutely. That was a great example of the ginger root because I believe most people, you know, would be familiar with ginger. So that's really interesting. Now,
hold on a sec, Lacey.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I was gonna look it up for you, but my book is not right here. So,
I have a question about the herbs. About how many different herbs would be combined to give to one person?
Great question. This is something that depends on style. So, the very modern practitioners that are, you know, coming out of school in the last 20, 30 years, that are learning what's called TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, which is a term that is just completely invented in the 1950s in China, when they created TCM, because they needed a medical system to treat all the people in the country. And so they rounded up traditional doctors from all over and attempted to put together what they thought was the best of all these different things and cut out any type of religious connotations whatsoever. And they labeled it traditional Chinese medicine. And then that is what got taught in all of the schools. And that is what came over here and is taught in most of the schools here as well. So this modern form of Chinese medicine is focused on sort of scientific proof of efficacy. It has no spiritual component in it. Lacey?
Yeah.
Why am I telling you this?
Well, one, I think it's very relevant because this is the type of school that you studied with. And I think that you were about to tell me how students of traditional Chinese medicine, otherwise known as TCM, how they would subscribe a tea formula.
Right. So in this modern sort of version, it's become very like this herb does this herb does that, this herb is good for this herb. Oh, the elbow hurts too. Let's add this herb. And so the formulas tend to be like 20, 25 ingredients. Okay. Now, the older style practitioners that are practicing what is now called classical Chinese medicine. So these are traditions that remained intact through communism and still have all of the spiritual components with them. They're typically family traditions
Hmm.
that remained intact,
Mhm.
Taoist
Mhm.
medicine
Yes.
traditions.
Mhm.
They still have everything sort of together. There's also purists that follow certain books from the history, such as the Shanghanlun, very, very famous herbal book, 200 AD, outlining a complete system of diagnosis and formulas for
Wow.
every disorder.
That's
Okay.
that's really incredible.
So there's people that adhere to this book and they only will use these formulas.
Mhm.
And these formulas have like 4 or 5 ingredients,
Wow.
you know?
That's so great. I
So,
think, yeah, I really, it's so interesting to think here, Bill, that, you have been tasked with this, um, to be able to explain such complex, to provide such an answers in a simplified way to a subject that is very complex, right? So thank you for doing that. This is a big task here.
yeah.
Would you like to take on the task of explaining Qi Gong or Tai Chi in our last few minutes of the presentation today?
Yeah. Let me just quickly label the 5 branches because so we see what they are. So
Yeah.
we have acupuncture,
Mm-hmm.
which includes moxibustion, by the way.
Okay.
We have herbal therapy, which we just discussed. We have
Mm-hmm.
Qi Gong, which also, keep in mind, is a modern term that did not exist back in the day, but we call it Qi Gong now. So that represents essentially any type of meditation or therapeutic exercises.
Okay.
We have Tui Na, which is physical manipulation of the body.
Hmm.
Not quite massage,
Okay.
probably a little more like chiropractic if we had to try to put a name on it, because these
Mm-hmm.
are the folks that are going to set your bones when they're broken and,
Hmm.
you know, deal
Mm-hmm.
with very physical
Mm-hmm.
manipulation of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And then food and diet and drink, what you put into your body food wise. Those are the 5 branches.
Oh, the
Uh,
last one, the fifth one is diet.
yeah,
Okay.
yes. And the Chinese approach to dietary therapy is so different than the Western
Mm-hmm.
approach because
Mm-hmm.
they're
Mm-hmm.
concerned with the temperature of
Mm-hmm.
foods and the yin and yang qualities of the
Mm-hmm.
food.
And
They're
I
also
would imagine that
colors.
mhm. I'd imagine those terms really do apply throughout all five as far as yin yang and as well. But is
Yes,
there an expression of that in the third branch of Qigong?
absolutely. Qigong, which again, just quickly, is a term that was fabricated
Mm-hmm.
in the 1950s. So, the communist government was taking over. Um, and Qigong, which at that point was called Dao Yin, which really means like breath work, sort of like pranayama,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yes.
But it was infused with all kinds of spiritual and religious elements. Um, and so the government was like, no, 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 no. This is not, we cannot have this.
Mm-hmm.
So a few of the practitioners of the time came up with the term Qi Gong to replace the older term,
Mm-hmm.
because in the 1950s mindset of the Chinese government, the words Qi Gong were very scientific sounding. They were not religious sounding.
Okay. Oh,
Qi simply means energy, and it's not considered a religious term there. And Gong just means practice or work. That's it. So practice or work to build your energy. And the government was okay with that. And so these two practitioners were able to save some of the traditional Qigong forms through this very difficult time in Chinese history
Mm.
by renaming it Qi Gong,
Yeah,
which we
wow. Yeah, how about that? You know,
see.
on your website, I did see that you have made available some different forms of Qigong, and what I saw was figures, more or less human figures, and the way that they're moving. So, Qigong being that energy practice, I would assume, but hopefully you could tell us a bit more about what some of those movements are and
Oh,
that
yeah.
they are moving and how they are therapeutic.
Right. So it can be as simple as something, if I back up a little bit, I'll show you.
Mhm.
It can be as simple sitting or standing as something like this. Just over and over.
Mhm.
And you're just breathing naturally, um, relaxing essentially. It
Mhm.
can be that simple.
Mhm.
And then a simple exercise like that through study of the literature, you can infuse something like that with all kinds of wonderful imagery if you wanted to,
Mhm.
as you learn more about the philosophy
Mhm.
and the core underpinning of essentially all Chinese arts.
Mhm.
They all come from this.
Black book? Okay. The I Ching. Yeah. I Ching. Nice.
This is the source
Mhm.
of Chinese philosophy and from where all the arts come from: poetry, calligraphy, martial arts, medicine arts, Qigong. They're all following these principles from this book, which dates back, we don't even know. We know we have found tortoise shells with parts of this book inscribed on them from the Shang dynasty of 3000 BC.
Wow. It's
So
absolutely fabulous. I think that you are referencing here towards right at the end of the program, referencing a book that is available for library patrons to check out
yeah,
from the Macintosh Memorial Library and through our collaborating library system as well. So I want to remind people that you can check out books from the library. You can access the library's website. You could give the librarians a call here, or you could even stop by the lobby and fill out some forms, some paper forms to request your books. Was
this
there
book
a
is,
closing thought, Bill?
yep, this book here
Hmm.
is the most popular and commonly read book for anyone who just wants to understand Chinese medicine in a relatively simple fashion. You know, practitioners don't use this book, but it is very accurate and incredibly in depth. So this is the one that I recommend to anyone who wants to just learn about Chinese medicine. The other thing I'd like to say is that the term Qigong has become kind of an umbrella term. Underneath that umbrella is all, meditation practices, all physical exercises that improve your qi or your energy. All are under this umbrella of Qigong now. So Tai Chi is even under the umbrella of Qigong now, even though Tai Chi is a martial art. And so it really sort of exists or used to exist in a different world.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, it's now really considered a form of Qigong because you're also moving slowly. It adheres to all the same principles. It just happens to have a self-defense aspect to
Hmm.
the training.
Now, Bill, did you lead a group of people, or you have? have you taught Qi Gong before in groups, two
Oh yeah,
groups of people? Yeah.
yeah. I've been teaching since well, about 10 years.
Hmm.
I have my official teaching certificate from Grandmaster William Chen in New
Hmm.
York,
Hmm.
and Ken Cohen is also my Qigong teacher. And we meet in the park in Baroqua once a week.
Hmm.
Not now because it's winter,
Hmm.
but as soon as it's above 30 degrees, we'll be out there.
Okay, great. Would you be making announcements about that, maybe from your
Yeah.
Facebook
Yeah,
page?
it'll be on the Facebook page. It'll also be on my website. I'll
Hmm.
also send it out to anyone on my mailing list.
Hey, that's great. That's
You
really
know,
great. What a resource you are, Mr. Fiorella. That's so great. I want to see here in the last few minutes, maybe if anybody has one question or a closing remark for Bill, if they'd like to pop on and say a little bit. Always give that a pause. Oh, something in the chat.
I'll just say I really appreciate it. It's been great, Bill. Really great.
thank you, Mary.
Am reminded of so much that I know and don't practice that I need, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here today, Mary, as well.
Oh, it's great. You'll be seeing me, Bill.
Okay. Come to the
I need
park.
the mugwort.
Oh, yes.
I do. I have one thumb that's getting stiff. So
Yeah, it's very good for that.
That's
yeah.
so great. Well, that can lead right into the final thoughts about how a person could connect with Bill. There's a few options. He does have his website, which we keep referencing. That is again www.williamfiorella, spelled Fiorella.com. Mr. Fiorella works out of Viroqua. He has a really beautiful logo. You want to just mention what that is really quickly, Bill?
Yeah, it's a traditional Chinese signature stamp
Mhm.
that says it has two characters. It has Shao and Hua. Shao means little or small. Hua means flower.
Mhm.
So small flower, little flower. My last name, Fiorella, means little flower in Italian.
That's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
So essentially, my signature stamp in somewhat of a creative fashion.
Mhm.
Great.
That's so great. I really enjoyed knowing that. It's really, really quite nice.
Yeah,
Um,
I've had it for a long time. I've had that.
yeah. So that is one way to connect with Bill. Otherwise, I do welcome any follow-up emails to come directly to me as well, which is at my work email, the letter L period Sheldon at WRLSWEB.org. And I want to say thank you again to our presenter today, Mr. William Fiorella. You were tasked with quite a lot, but I feel that you have, really explained things very well and have offered an education to us in this way. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling me and facilitating and moderating. And thanks everyone for attending. It would be really weird to do this with nobody attending.
Thanks to everybody out there, and we wish you all a very nice day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.